keep it here. No, I don't have any PowerPoints. Yay. I was anticipating being the only thing that was going to keep you from presentations and lunch. So I was going to skip the PowerPoint and honestly just give you an update on something I talked about at this conference last year. But first I want to say thank you again to all of the conference organizers, and this is a really great venue. I'm a little wistful. One of my, I would just say my absolute favorite job I ever had was mapping abandoned mines for the BLM, actually right outside of here in Hinsdale County between Cinnamon Pass, Engineer Pass, and Slumgullion Pass. And I had the opportunity to camp out for an entire field season at a time, just me and my dog, hike 10, 12 miles a day and map everything we could find. And there was something called the electric coffee. Who remembers the electric coffee? It was right here in this room. The electric coffee was a guy from Colorado Springs who was a coffee master, and he had his own roastery. And if you ever came in, you might see him with a metronome and a stainless steel bowl and a stainless steel wire whisk, and he would blend his coffee by hand with the metronome after he roasted it. And this would actually get me out of my tent. I would come down the 45 minutes into town, get my quadruple espresso, and then go back to my field area, because it was the best espresso I'd ever had, period. And now he donated, I believe he donated the space to the Art Center. So I believe his name was Tully. He had really round glasses, and he lasted about 2 or 3 years here. So bittersweet. So back to Good Samaritans. I just want to start by saying what I know you guys all probably agree with me on. It's critical to do everything we can to improve water quality in Colorado, and especially in our communities. It's also important for us to improve the image of modern mines that continue to suffer the stigma from pre-law mining activities, which many of the modern mines had no responsibility for, just like many of the private property owners have no responsibility for. If we were able to improve water quality at these pre-law mines, we could create good jobs, we could mobilize outside dollars that are waiting in the wings, and we could stretch taxpayer dollars. We would also be helping to solve a very serious problem, which is we need to increase the amount of clean water available for multiple uses in the Colorado River Basin and pretty much all river basins. But the Colorado River Basin, which is ours, is on my mind. I don't know if any of you heard a report on NPR yesterday, and I traced down the source, and it's actually from December 12th, 2012, a pretty famous date, that names the Colorado River as the top of the 10 most endangered rivers, and I believe that is in the U.S. And the reason it's listed at the top is because it's over-appropriated. We've added 10 million more people to the Colorado River Basin just between 1990 and 2008. And even though the per capita use of the Colorado River water by the people in this basin continues to go down, we just can't continue to stretch it much further. We need more clean water. It's currently supporting 35 to 37 million people, and by 2050, it's supposed to maybe explode by 70%. We'll see if that happens. And this is the fastest growing area in the country between 1990 and 2008. It irrigates 4 million acres. It waters 15% of the crops from the United States. So you see where I'm going. We need to mobilize our imagination and ability to improve water quality at these abandoned mine sites. Over 100,000 in the West, over 500,000 in the whole country. Not every single one is draining water, but there are things that we can do to improve water quality, but maybe not quite go so far as what the Clean Water Act requires. And every time that we can significantly reduce the concentration of toxic metals, even in areas where there's natural acid drainage, we will have done a really good thing, and it is vital because 40% of the headwater communities are impacted by drainages, toxic drainage from abandoned mines in the United States. That was one figure I found. So where are we at? Last year I told you I went to the National Association of Counties conference in March in Washington, D.C., and worked with 2 steering committees. The steering committee is like a policy committee that then lobbies the federal legislature, Congress, and the Senate on certain policies, and also the administration and agencies like the EPA. And we came out with a bipartisan, unanimous resolution that said National Association of Counties recognized that there is an immediate need to eliminate disincentives and establish incentives for clearly limiting liability and incentivizing voluntary cooperative efforts aimed at improving and protecting water quality impacted by historic mining where there is no financially responsible party. December 2012, another 12-12-12 date, the EPA and Lisa Jackson announced a new initiative. During that period of all of last year, and actually I believe starting in late 2011, I should mention that both Colorado Senators Bennett and Udall had been writing letters to the EPA, asking them questions and asking them to clarify why Good Samaritans didn't already have freedom from liability for improving water quality at abandoned mine sites for which they were not responsible for the pollution. And this 12-12-12, the EPA released a new initiative. Some described it as a, quote, tweak to break the legal impasse. The EPA described it as an initiative to accelerate Good Samaritan's ability to do partial cleanups without liability and to reduce CERCLA barriers. The question remains, how effective is this new initiative? They're still sorting it out, and there's still several big issues for Good Samaritans. The first I want to highlight is, while performing work, Good Samaritans generally don't have liability for the pollution, but they might after the work is completed. So currently, with a 2007 EPA initiative, you have to, as a Good Samaritan, do a pre-agreement on what exactly your scope of work is going to be. And if you go outside of that scope of work for whatever reason, you are vulnerable, is my understanding. And for those of you who have done some mine site mitigation, you realize that it's hard to gaze into that crystal ball and have everything go perfect on a reclamation project. There are sometimes surprises that you just simply can't know about in advance, but you want to have the latitude to react to them appropriately, smartly, and in a Good Samaritan role, you don't want to incur liability for something that you couldn't control. So Good Samaritans remain fearful because after the successful completion of their obligations under a current CERCLA tool for Good Sams, discharge of pollutants is still likely, hopefully at a lower concentration. And the EPA regulations, quote, state, any person who discharges or proposes to discharge pollutants has a duty to apply for an NPDES permit, which then could turn that Good Samaritan into, quote, an operator, like presumably an operator has control over the discharge. And that's a real fear. So this EPA initiative is still being sorted out. I understand on the good side that there are some projects being examined in Colorado and maybe Montana to allow Good Samaritans to try out this new initiative. And we're waiting for the EPA to hopefully give us more assurance on some bullet points that they included in their initiative in 2012. Basically, the EPA says they're looking at ways to determine if Good Samaritans have successfully completed their scope of work And one of the ways they would do this in the future, potentially, would be to have a monitoring period where the Good Samaritans would measure the results from their activities, maybe over a 5 or 10 year period. During that period, the Good Samaritans would be free of liability. So the question then goes back to what happens after that. The EPA says, well, they would look at certain factors for Good Samaritans. Does the Good Samaritan have access to a site after they've completed that scope of work? Do the Good Samaritans have a relationship or a contract with the site owner to control future discharges? Do the Good Samaritans have the power to make timely discovery of changes to discharges? Do Good Samaritans have the power or responsibility to direct activities of persons who control mechanisms, if there are any, causing ongoing discharges? And if the answers are no, then the EPA says in their initiative that they feel that the Good Samaritan should not have any liability, and also should not be considered an operator, and also should not have to get a future discharge permit. But then they go on to say that somebody would have to get a discharge permit for that remaining pollution. And that somebody may be the site owner, which then gets us back potentially to that site owner a no-fault owner? Is it somebody who just inherited a patented mining claim which had activities on it 100 years ago? And is that then a disincentive for that owner to allow a Good Samaritan to come in the first place? I'm confident that as we continue to realize how important clean water is and how important it is to continue to grow and have a sustainable economy, both in headwaters communities and throughout America. Even recreation, for example, I believe it was a $26 billion industry just in the Colorado River Basin alone. We have to be able to address creative, innovative, cost-efficient ways of improving water quality, even if we don't get every ounce of that pollution addressed. And so we're looking to the EPA to come out with some more information. I still don't know if we need to have legislation or what that legislation would look like. So I sound like I'm up here as a so-called expert, not really an expert, and that's exactly right. I know there's some people in the room who have been on the forefront of this issue for more than a decade, and I would just invite any comments from those experts in the room to correct any deficiencies in any statements I've made or to add to the conversation. And thanks so much.